This client brought us 2 silver David Yurman Cable rings that needed to go up from size 6 to size 10. The first thing I do is make one cut in the middle of the pattern on the bottom of the ring. Sizing up any ring by 4 sizes takes a lot more time and effort than sizing rings smaller. You'll see later on what I'm talking about. Using my ring stretcher, I'm able to bend the rings open to approximately the correct size. I push the rings lower down on the stretcher after each time I pull down on the lever. And I always double check the size on my mandrel. Perfect 10. Next, I set my dividers to the same approximate size of the opening on the rings. Then, I transfer those lines onto this old piece of Tiffany jewelry that I'll be cutting apart to use as sizing stock. To help me see the lines, I've colored some Sharpie onto this silver. I simply cut along the lines, and I end up with 2 pieces of silver that are the exact size that I need. Whenever I'm sizing rings up, the material I add needs to be slightly thicker in width and thickness than the rings themselves. As you can see, these pieces fit perfectly. When I solder rings that have gemstones that are anything except diamond, ruby, or sapphire, I need to protect the stones from heat. I've learned the hard way that most other types of stones will either burn, crack, or permanently change color if they get too hot. Here, I cut out the 4 pieces of solder that I'll need. Once I get my ring set up in the water, I grab my torch and turn it on and set it to an extremely hot temperature. Silver already melts slightly hotter than gold, but having the ring in water means I might need double the temperature I'd normally need to get the solder to melt. Now I apply some flux which helps guide the solder to flow into the seams. Getting the solder to melt takes quite some time as I'm constantly fighting against the water to get the ring hot enough. And now it starts to flow. The thing I've always liked about David Yurman rings are their thick designs. David himself got his start as a sculptor, and it really shows in many of his ring designs. The soldering is done, but as you can see, there's a lot of extra material to get rid of. Using a low grit sanding wheel, I slowly start by grinding away on the inside of the ring. I switch to a smaller grinding wheel to carefully remove material near the edge of my sizing piece. I'm trying not to eat away at any part of the original ring. Before I go any further, I need to get rid of these gaps and form the rings back into being round. When I'm hitting parts of the original ring and I don't want to imprint any dents or scuffs onto the metal, I use a rawhide mallet. However, when I do need to flatten and shape the added piece of the ring, I use my chasing hammer. This one helps stretch the ring to the needed size. I repeat the process for the second ring. Next, I attach a grinding wheel to my polishing machine and begin grinding away the excess metal on the sides and outer edges of the rings. My favorite part of this whole process is adding the pattern back onto the rings. I start by carving these lines into the silver using a very thin cutting disc. This process is difficult and often time-consuming, and when I first started, I'd have to draw out the pattern first with a scribe and then grind away slowly by tracing the lines. But now, after years of experience, I pretty much just eyeball what I'm doing. Most of the pattern is now added onto this ring, and it's time to do the next one. The second ring's pattern differs slightly from the first. The cable design is doubled, so I start by grinding a line right down the middle of the ring. Now, I add on these diagonal lines along the sides. For the inside, I switched to a smaller grinding disc, one that can easily fit inside the ring. Step by step, the rings are looking better and better. My goal is to always hide the work that I've done. No one wants to bring in rings for sizing and get them back looking worse. With the coarse grinding done, I get the rings ready for polishing by going in with these fine grit abrasive wheels. The main thing I'm doing here is softening all the sharp edges that I made with the cutting discs. Finally, I'm ready to polish. First, I add on some rouge polishing compound to my wheel. This helps give the silver a mirrored finish. To match the original look of the rings, I'm going to apply some black antiquing paint. I apply a generous coat so it can reach all the way down into the deepest parts of the design. Once I'm done, I let them sit for a couple hours. Now that the paint has dried, I'm ready to do a final polish of the rings. This wheel will only polish away at the very top layer of the silver and won't remove any of the paint that goes below the surface of the ring. The end result is a beautiful contrast which emphasizes the added pattern of the silver. Thanks for watching.